right up until my Uncle Paul, who did 2 tours in Vietnam as a Navy SEAL, reached out and said, hey, we want you to come down here and become part of this vet force. I'm like, I want nothing to do with government anything, right? And I stupidly made a bet with him, and I didn't realize he was a spook with a major NSA contract. So he had access to my files, and he called me back in record time and said, you were here, here, and here on this date and this date. If you want to talk about it any further, we're going to have to get on a secure line. And I'm like, fuck.
The Codega is a guide and a storyteller, escorting you through the night, lighting the way, warding off thieves, ghosts, demons, and other oddities. Along the journey, his companions would often share with him the most curious of stories that he'd record in his Codex. Perhaps you just might find yourself traveling with the Codega and sharing one of yours. All right, I'm looking forward to this interview, and today we have Deepal on. Deepal, welcome to Codega's Codex of Curiosities. I am excited to have you on. You know, you're an author, and there's so much more to you than just that. Can you fill us in a little bit about yourself so you can tell everybody who you are and what you do and what you've done as well?
Ryan, it's great to be on your show. Thank you so much for having me as a guest. I've enjoyed your work. I think you get into some great topics, and I really believe we're going to have a great show. I put up a lot of extra protection. Hopefully we don't blow up any computers and have some electronic twinkles in the night sky, right?
Yeah, we were saying before we started, you said that your one computer, it was like a $2,000 computer, is now a boat anchor. Jeez.
This one blew up yesterday. Calls, it'll drop things, but it won't come back now. It's toast.
It's toast. Yeah.
I thought I blew it up a long time ago when, a year or so ago when I was doing some work, not this type of work, with my friend granddaughter growing Navajo reservation. And we really had a lot going. And all of a sudden sparks just started popping right off to the side of this computer, and everything dropped. And when we reconnected, we had an interesting conversation about the levels we crossed. Okay. As we were, what we were doing, we kind of jumped through some things and some timelines and stuff. And it was pretty interesting.
So that wasn't an exaggeration when you say you blew up the computer. You literally were seeing sparks coming out of it.
Yeah, that was before it just finally blew up this time. Okay, but yeah, so I did one out of Seattle, and I had to put my phone in my pocket because we had the call drop 5, 6, 8 times. So the phone kept me connected, but the computer, kept dropping us. So,
wow. Okay,
just pay attention for the flashes, and
and stuff.
Like I said, I got a lot of extra protection up, so
fantastic. And I appreciate that because, like I'm sure known that I seem to have issues with electronics with my guests or with myself. Power going, literally dropping power in my own in this house only, nothing else. Everything else is good. Other things happening, so I'm putting it out there. Everything is going to work flawlessly this time. We won't have any issues. But Deepal, tell us a little bit about yourself. So I was saying that you're an author. Why don't you tell us about the books that you've written? And feel free to name them all and whatnot.
Yeah, so let's kind of work from present backwards.
Okay.
Mysteries of the Windemen, Book 1, The Feral Feline. This is a caricature of the actual building. Cat not included, but the cat is there. Okay. Mysteries of the Windemen. It's a phenomenal story. It's a 300-year-old structure that houses an untold number of ghosts and spirits that are contained inside the brick walls. And underneath and around this property is some of the darkest stuff I've ever bumped into. The heart of the story goes back 280 years when Elizabeth Shaw, in the early 1700s, was hanged, executed twice. Okay. First one didn't take, right? Kind of like we have these calls get interrupted by the spirit world.
Yes.
Okay. That first execution got interrupted in December in New England. Okay. And her father, who was racing back with a pardon from the territorial or the colonial government, the colonial governor, had given him a pardon. It was in his pocket, and he's racing back on his horse. And he comes up over the crest of the hill. He was within musket shot of his daughter when the noose stopped twitching the second time. Okay.
Wow. Okay.
Legend has it he fell from his horse, cursed the lands, okay, and the people. And Miss Elizabeth, on her second hanging, her curse just literally was like wind blowing across the leaves and the trees and throughout the land, throughout the village of Wyndham Center. And for 280 years, she has been seen countless times by police and firemen and the average citizen, people that have lived here, peering in her windows, walking through the cornfields, standing on the side of the road, in the grass of the church across the street. The heart of the story is about what happened to her and nearly 300-year-old curse, right? But the reality is far different. And when you start reading this series, I mean, it is a wild ride, even for me.
So
quite enjoyable.
I have a question about the book. Is the book is it a nonfiction, or is it kind of like a fiction, nonfiction mixed together? How do you write?
Everything I write is nonfiction. All right. I really don't do fiction. There is always literary license in anything that a writer does. You gotta make the story flow and so on. But, the ghosts are real. The narrator is a ghost who talks to me and tells me her side of things. The research on what went on in the property comes from people that lived there when it was 8 or 10 apartments packed into this former inn. And a number of the people that I interviewed, I've known my whole life. The main character is called Master Gary, but his name is Gary Jackon. Him and I grew up together. Okay. He ended up living at the inn for a number of years. And when my other books came out, Date with Suicide, Steps to Crazy, and so on, he had read these books and wanted to reconnect. So he had stopped by on his motorcycle. His motorcycle plays a key role in this thing when he was a kid, right? And he had said to me, he told me the story of this black cat that would haunt him in his dreams and would attack him in his sleep. And he couldn't remember how many times he'd wake up thrashing to get this cat off of him, all right? And he'd turn the light on and there's no cat, right? And your bedroom, where the hiding places are. Okay, this is a 300-year-old building, all right? And the rooms aren't conducive to hiding places. You got new furniture in some old buildings, right? So that's how the whole thing started. And that's where that feral feline comes into play. Okay?
Interesting.
Now, he had this dream and he was attacked multiple times, has the scratches to prove it. Okay. But the scratches on the back were the toughest ones for him to explain to his girlfriend. Okay. Imagine that. Well, anyway, he came to my house and he's telling me this stuff.
I was trying to what do you mean? I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah, so that cat that was haunting his dreams and attacking him in his sleep, was literally scratching the loving Jesus out of him. Okay. But it was never a real cat in his room. What he loves. He's an animal lover. He loves kittens, and he's always taking care of the strays and the farm cats and, the cats in the village. Okay. Because this is really a rural area. All right. But this feral feline mingles in with real cats. All right. It's a wild, wild ride, but don't be misled by the kindness of a feral cat. Okay. I equate them to tricksters, demons, things that I've cleared out of people and houses and so on. But anyway, it's a wild ride of a story, and people that read it are posting 5-star reviews all over the place. And it's really been fun to listen to the response. And I'll wrap this up with the other couple of books, because the stuff I had written prior, A Date with Suicide, a veteran or family members of veterans, or you want to understand why 50 plus veterans a day are committing suicide. I walk the reader through why, what, where, and when, how it happens. And it all kind of began when I wrote 2,442 Steps to Crazy, the beginning. Book 2 of this series will be out somewhere early next year. That book right there takes the reader up to my age of 14, talking about my life and child abuse and all the things I had to deal with to survive and then be homeless at the ripe age of 14.
Jeez, that's quite the traumatic life right there. Up to the age of 14, and So I want to backtrack a little bit. You say that the Wyndham book, the Wyndham Estates book, you were being narrated to by a spirit then. So a spirit was talking to you and telling you the stories or the incidents that occurred at this location then, correct?
Yes.
Interesting. Okay, so I'm assuming, I'm just going to take it for granted that you are a medium as well, that or you have that ability for at least clairaudience where you can hear things.
Yes. Hear, see, sense, know, dreams, visions. Okay, there isn't much that I don't.
So you got a little bit of you not a little bit, but you have everything. You got the whole deal then, the whole the happy meal, so to speak. Oh.
Yeah, they God topped me off when gas was cheap, man.
Okay, so can we start with like how you discovered, or maybe that might be the book 2,442 Steps. Maybe that's the book that we should start with, is that life and how you develop these abilities or how you recognize that you had them.
Yeah, the book 2,442 Steps to Crazy, the beginning, walks the reader through my young life. In that book, there's a chapter dedicated to the greatest football team to ever exist. Okay? All right. So it doesn't have anything to do with child abuse and all that tough stuff, right? But in the middle of this book, it walks the reader through the freshman football team that I played on that had a perfect record with a perfect coach. And it set the stage for, a different view in life for me. Okay? Because when you're raised in an environment that's just brutal, it's hard to maintain hope and faith and belief, right? And when you have when you have a football team that set a state record for the greatest freshman football team in the history of, fill in the blank, that's the not getting scored upon and the winning every game. That's a story all by itself. But what it took for this collage of young men to come together, and this coach who came out of nowhere, and I mean nowhere. He never coached high school football before, came in from Germany from the military, coached us for 1 year, and then I've never seen him again. All right. And I call him Coach Perfect because he taught me so much in that brief window, and the winning and how we won these games had more to do with faith as I look back on it than it did with talent. Okay. So it's a phenomenal story baked right into the middle of this, craziness, where it really doesn't tell you where all my gifts and abilities come from, but you definitely know I have them because I start out by telling you, listen, this particular, ghost and this thing and so on and so on. So it doesn't dive nearly as deep as this does. Okay. But it gives you a good sense of what it was like to be me at a young age. Not nearly as deep a dive as we'll do in this discussion, but it gives you a sense of some things.
All right. So let's get into that deep dive then about you discovering.
Let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it. You lead the way, and I'm going to be joining you on this journey.
You're supposed to ask me questions.
Okay. So when was the first time you've ever had any of these experiences? Like, when was the first time that you had an experience that maybe a regular, I don't want to say normal, but another child might not have, that you realize that this is something else? Like, was there an imaginary friend that wasn't so imaginary?
Yeah, you can say normal or not normal with me because I'm not normal. There is nothing normal about me. And at a very young age, I knew it. Okay. So let me tell you, when I wrote my first book, I was in an interview and the lady said to me, I always ask my guests, what was the first memory you have in your lifetime? And it caught me off guard. All right. But without missing a beat, I said, yeah, it was when I was being thrown across the room and I landed on the corner of a chair and broke my ribs. Okay. And, the place went dead silent. Okay. And again, when you go through these things, it's normal to you, but it's not normal to the rest of society. Okay. And you shouldn't say the rest because there's a lot of people who have had to deal with abuse. Okay. So that was my opening interview, first out of my first book ever. And my first question, right? So that's truly my first memory, right? But my second memory is seeing the difference between the insanity of this guy, this stepfather, crazy, as I call him, okay? And all the darkness that floated around him and the white light beings that I could see around me, and I could feel the difference, okay? It was my first true lesson in good and bad, right? Hot and cold, evil versus good, right? The battle. And those are my first two thoughts. So as long as I can remember, my memories are always of having these gifts, and this one's going to loop you. Even as a young child, I know what people were thinking, and when they talk, I can tell you whether they're telling the truth, making it up, or flat out lying. Okay, but I've had that for forever. And when I talk to people, my soul all by itself, I walk into a room, 20 people in it, 10 of them want to fight me, and I've never met them, and the other 10 will love me, and they've never met me. Okay. That's the presence that I bring. Now try being a child and figuring that mess out, right? Adults looking at you and calling you these things. They don't know who you are, So it was an interesting, it's kind of a wild word to use, right? An interesting ride for me to, kind of figure these things out. And as I got older, I did everything I could to kind of, hide, bury, and keep this stuff under wraps,
I have a bit of I can relate to that a little bit, where I've had some weird experiences and you find out that it comes out pretty quickly that if you start to talk to people about it, or you bring it up to maybe your peers or, the other classmates, that you become the weird kid and you become ostracized and you become separated from the rest. So this was something that I learned that I needed to keep in myself. And I'm like, okay, I'm not going to talk about those things again. It's sometimes it's isolating, not only being in an abusive situation, not only that, but also you're in an abusive household. That is isolating onto itself as well.
Yeah. They've got 3 strike laws in certain states, and I had 3 strikes before I was 6 years old, right? Wrong side of the tracks, a crazy stepfather. And, I used to wear shoes with so many holes in them. The duct tape, I didn't have duct tape then, but you know where I'm going with this, right? So, I was ostracized just by societal norms to begin with, right? So I knew I was on my own and alone, even though I'm around people my whole life.
Interesting.
Especially as a child.
Yeah. It's sad, but it's interesting as well. So, you were kind of pushed out. And so at 14, you were pushed out of your house as well. You were saying you were homeless at 14?
Yeah. Yeah. I had gotten big enough where, crazy wasn't putting his hands on me anymore. And it, kind of built, right? And it kind of that football story that I told you about, right? That was the great success, which was followed by, what I call the great transition. Because, shortly after that victory, I was in a battle of life and death, literally. It wasn't the first time. Crazy killed me once or twice. I kind of don't have an accurate account how many times I was dead, close to dead, But at that point, it was I'd had enough. I was big enough. Wasn't putting his hands on me or my mother or anybody else anymore. And the cops were, kicking the door in, and, I was in a position where, nobody's putting their hands on me again. And I heard this voice that said, enough, let it go. Okay. And I did. But the part that, you can't say is satisfying, because that's just not right. It doesn't feel right. When I had him, okay, I could feel his spirit fleeing. Okay. Now I knew what it was like to have your spirit leave your body, because it happened to me a number of times. Okay. But this one was different. Okay. What's that Christmas movie where Bumbles bounce, right? You remember that one?
Yeah,
the big Bumble guy with the Yukon Cornelius.
Yukon Cornelius. Right? Yes.
Right. Bumbles bounce.
Bumbles bounce.
Well, in hindsight, I'm remembering where it's like, hey, if you pull the teeth of a Bumble's, they're as helpless as a heel hound, right? Well, that's how I look at the position I was in when I was watching his spirit leave. Okay. if you've ever felt true defeat, right, of another person or something else, and I mean the true emotion of defeat, okay, it is a feeling. Again, I've only felt that one time, but it is a feeling that you don't want to repeat and you don't want to take from another living person. Okay. Again, it was one way or another. Somebody was going out in a body bag. Okay. And it wasn't going to be me that day.
So if you don't mind me asking, so it sounds like you took the life of your stepfather at this point.
No. I was in the position to.
Okay. So you're in the position to, but then you stopped it at that point.
Yep. I said, enough. Okay. Enough. Right. I mean, the spirit world has always protected me, right? I mean, it kind of comes with an explanation. How's the spirit world protect you when you were getting your ass beaten, right? You know, okay. I mean, it's just something I had to figure out, and I have. But no, I had enough good stuff around me that they kind of, talked to me, and I listened, and I knew it. You know, I'm, the question is, could you, would you? Listen, man, you put anybody in a life and death situation. Okay, doesn't matter who you are or where you are.
Yeah, no,
you'll make a decision.
I agree.
One way or another.
I do agree with you. And when you're talking about like angels or our spirit guides, our angels being with us, it always reminds me of this one episode I watched. It was called the TV show was called Touched by an Angel, and there was an occasion where this woman, she had to, like, it was her destiny to be killed, almost martyred, but the angel itself took over and took the pain, took the brunt of it, so that she didn't have to endure as much pain as she should have. And that still sticks to me to this day. That is, in my mind, that is what guardian angels are there for. They're there to assist us, to help us, and to transition us as well. But
that's a great explanation, Ryan. That's a great explanation.
Okay. Yeah, that episode, that show was a fantastic show. I think we need something like that to come back, something wholesome and healthy for us. But okay, so you had said something that you had out of body experiences. Let's go back and touch on those. So was it were they NDEs, or were they like astral projection, out of body experiences, or what were they?
I don't know what NDE means.
NDE is a near death experience.
Yeah, I've had a number of those.
Okay. Yeah, if you don't mind talking about them and or these out of body experiences as well.
Well, so out of body, two different things. One is when a person goes through trauma, your spirit will leave your body to protect itself. Okay, we can get into that. The other is, kind of, you said three things, and one of them was astral plane. Yeah, I do meditate, and I do catch a ride on the jet stream, and, from time to time, go some places. So yes, but I think more along the lines of what you're getting at, is, yeah, when I was a kid, my spirit left me. I really don't know how many times. There's some pretty good gaps in my memory, and I mean some significant time periods where I can't, I know things happened, but I can't remember any of it. Let me give you an example of one that happened many years later. When I was 21, I was attached to a submarine that's kind of hanging on the wall behind me. If you ever saw the movie Hunt for Red October.
I love that movie. Yeah.
Yeah. I was on that boat. I actually read Tom Clancy's book while we were deployed. And one of the books I'm writing, takes us through Operation Obtain Document 3, which was when the United States and Muammar Gaddafi had its first real tussle back in the early 80s, mid 80s or so, when he drew a line of death across the Mediterranean. I was there, so was the rest of the crew. But the Walker family, kind of shifting gears but staying with that submarine thought, the Walker family sold all our cryptography to the Russians. Okay, what does that mean? That means if we want to talk to people, talk to ourselves in the military, to our cryptography, okay, it was compromised. So we were getting mission orders by paper, okay, which meant we had to surface and transit with helicopters and surface boats and so on and so on. It doesn't tend to be dangerous, but of course it can. On this particular day, it got very dangerous. And I got sucked down between the submarine and the ocean-going boat, and, looking up about 18 inches of water above me, and I go, this is going to suck, okay? And then all I heard was the starting of the crunch. And that was it. Next thing I know, I'm floating about 30 feet above the boat, watching them pull me out of the ocean, you know. And, I can feel my gatekeeper, one of my spirit guides, my main spirit guide next to me. I could feel and see other things. But I had a sense of knowing and, what was happening. And then, there was some things that went on that I won't talk about. All right. And then there's a 30-hour gap. So my last memory is watching them pulling me out of the ocean and these conversations. Okay. And then 30 hours go by and I woke up in Iraq, climbed out. it was a day and a half later. And, I'm checking my fingers and toes and I was pretty beat up, but we were back in our op box doing what we do. So, the cool part of the story is if I'd have dropped dead, they would just stuff me in the freezer and dealt with me when the operation was done. Right. But went back on the watch bill shortly thereafter. And, but that was one time that I got hurt really bad and I hurt a few other times, but that took a toll on me and eventually caught up with me in the military, retired me on injuries, so now I'm retired, 6 years in the Navy and I got a retirement, right?
Jeez. Okay. Yeah.
With a lot of gifts, gifts that wake you up all night long, pain that you can't take,
Fair enough.
A lot of good stuff. A lot of good memories.
You got to take some things home with you. Yeah.
Prizes, baby. You get prizes. We're going to retire you with gifts.
Oh my God. Okay. If you don't mind me asking, how did you end up in the water? Like how did that happen? How did that event happen?
So, imagine a submarine, which is designed to be underwater, not on the surface. Okay. Well, we have to surface and then we have to do personnel transfers and, exchange documents. Okay. So imagine an attaché case filled with top secret information that's being handed off from a person on a Navy surface ship, right? Okay. While you're in the middle of the ocean. Okay. Now here's the fun part. A surface ship follows the waves. A submarine reacts in the opposite direction.
Okay.
So when the waves are at their lowest, the submarine on the surface is at its highest because it takes time to displace 6,900 tons of steel, right? So you're doing this and you got to time these things and you got to be mindful of all the waves coming around you. So you're tethered to the boat and you got a line tender and so on. And on this particular day, we had this guy, and you can bleep this if you want, this douchebag named Rye. Okay. He was a second class petty officer who, walked around like he was the Master Chief of the Navy. Nobody liked him. Nobody. And on a submarine with 120 guys, there was one officer that nobody could stand and one enlisted guy. Okay. Well, this enlisted guy, was such a, the Cobb came to me, the chief of the boat, senior enlisted guy, and says, listen, I need your help. We got to acclimate him to the crew and I need you to let him be your line tender topside. And I'm like, no way, man, this ain't happening. Right. But I'm an 03 or enlisted E3, E4, whatever I was at the time. You don't tell an E9 no. I mean, you can, but, you're still going to lose. Anyway, he was the line tender. And sure as shit, what he didn't do is he didn't pay attention. And when boats come together, they create a wake, right? So imagine a submarine hull like this and a surface ship like this. It's just crashing waves. So you gotta have somebody to watching behind you and yanking your chain so they can pull you back up along the outside of the submarine. Okay. Well, he didn't. And that wave took out the back of my legs and sucked me under just like that. I mean, it was 1.5 seconds and I was under and looking up and saying, this is going to suck. So when I came to 30 something hours later, met with the Cobb in the goat locker where all the senior enlisted hang out. And he says, you can pick your own tender from here on out. I said, damn right I can,
Oh my God.
It didn't do much for Rye, I'll tell you that.
I was thinking that, he probably lost any little bit of credibility is now completely out the door.
It was a lot more than that. I was a pretty good sailor. I was a pretty good sailor, and I did a lot of stuff for the Navy that was, I did a lot of stuff for the Navy. And I'm not going to say I never complained, but I did a lot of stuff. I mean, I put a lot into the Navy, taking care of the crew. And, I was asked to do a lot of things and I did a lot of things. So I was well liked, I got 3 stripes meritoriously.
Oh, wow. So that's awesome.
I was a pretty good warrior.
Definitely. So, okay. So And you had mentioned as well that there was some like in your childhood, you said there was periods that you don't remember as well.
Yeah.
And when you're talking about that, you mean like your memory is gone. Like there's, maybe years that go by that you don't remember anything or something like that. If I am
correct. No, not years, just time frames. I mean, I suffered so much head trauma. It was stupid. I mean, I'm surprised that the VA hasn't diagnosed me as punch stroke, right? I mean, that's how much abuse I took as a child. So, if somebody smashes you upside the head, you go blank for however long, right? I mean, I'm not sure how boxers do it, but you know where I'm going with this. You get punched in the nose, okay? That crunch you hear, and then, you lose yourself for a second, minute, whatever it is, right? I had so many of those. There's just gaps in time of when I was growing up, and then when I wrote the book, a lot of the stuff that I intentionally made disappear, right? Mentally, stuff you don't want to deal with. It took a lot to re-deal with that, and a lot of memories that I didn't want to deal with, and came back. And the books really helped me through, what they call recovery, right? But helped me through, helped me process a lot of trauma.
I was going to say it was like therapy is what it was, but you pretty much took the words out of my mouth when you were saying that. So that's fantastic. Now, 14, you're out on your own. Where do you go from there?
Yeah, so in book 2, you'll see, I lived in the cemetery for a little while and lived under a bridge. And then, man, the hits just kept on coming, right? I got stabbed and I ended up in the hospital, and then the cops were there, and, chief of police made some phone calls, and family took me in. Some folks, it was actually my football coach in midgets, when you're, under 12, right? It's the guy that, his son is a little younger than me. And they took me in, right? And literally saved my life, So from 14 to 17, or 15 to 17, 15 to 17, right? I stayed with them, and, gave me an opportunity to see the world from a different place. And I can tell you to this day, the second half of book 2 of the Steps to Crazy, right? Which is titled One Step Away from Crazy, that kind of play on words where I was one step away from that lunatic. But, I remember waking up that morning, and there were different spirit guides around me, different levels of energy. And that's where a chunk of me opened up. Okay. So, I mean, that was a significant day. It's really wild, to think back on it. And here I am trying to not, I don't want to be this way. Why are you showing me all this crap? Right. And, I wake up that morning happy. It wasn't terrifying. I mean, I still slept all night with one eye open. That took 50 years to figure out. But, when I woke up and I saw and felt a significant spiritual difference around me, it was cool. It was really cool.
That is awesome. That is good to hear that you were able to, find a family that cared for you as well. That you eventually hopefully felt safe with at one point, because I know that would be difficult to try to overcome that. Now,
he was a Marine.
Okay,
he was a Marine, so he
was probably strict still, probably still strict, but not.
No, they were disciplined, but they were not strict. Never hit their kids. Never, they barely yelled at me. They yelled at me a few times, but I did some stupid shit, but they didn't really yell at their kids. They were very good parents. And the crazy part of my life is I watched so many people bitching about their lives and their parents, and I listened to them, especially in high school. And I would say all the time, man, you have no idea how lucky you got it. You have no idea. Because I never told anybody about my life. In fact, Ryan, I was married to my wife for 50 years, as I like to say, right? She corrects me. It was close. It's like 37 years now. But with the wind chill, okay,
with the wind chill, here we go. Yes.
You gotta get the wind chill, and then, okay, bleep this when my wife listens to your recording with. But, I kind of forgot where I was going with this.
You were saying that you maybe hadn't told your wife about your past.
So, right, I published this book. It's in my hand. I take it and I hand it to my wife. Okay. I never told her anything about my life. Nothing. Okay. She would ask me, how come we don't have any photographs? I mean, she knew a little bit. She knew that I live at home and so on. But when we got married, she's like, this is all you have? It was a duffel bag, right? They had some clothes and I didn't have any photos of my life. Nothing. Okay. So she takes the book, sits down, starts reading it. She didn't talk to me for days and days and days and days and days. All she did was cry. Okay. And then when she finally could talk to me, she said, I am so sorry. I now understand so much more, but I got to tell you, you weren't abused. You were tortured. And when she said that, it really hit me. It really hit me how bad it really was. And at that stage of my life, I kind of turned and looked at the spirit world and said, yeah, how tough was it for you to watch that, to watch me go through that? Now I'm having empathy for all the spirits that were around me, because I'm confident that they did everything they could do. But at the end of the day, as I, walk my red road, especially my Native American piece, the red road, okay, I understand why I had to go through all that and what purpose it meant for my soul and for helping others, so no, I don't want to do it again. No.
Yeah, no thanks.
And I don't wish it on anybody. Okay. But if somebody's got to go through it, I put my hand up and said, I'll be the guinea pig. Let's get this done. And learning to understand how the spirit world works and, helps you come to terms with what's happened to you with your traumas in life.
Wow. That is deep. That's really deep, Paul. So where do we go from here now?
Let's go to McDonald's, man.
Let's go to McDonald's. Let's get another Happy Meal that we were talking about there earlier. Let's revisit this Happy Meal. There's all these gifts, all these abilities to see things, to hear, to feel. Where did that take you now? Like, you retired from the Navy. Where did you go from there? Was it like, okay, let's embrace this and start going forward, or what was that journey?
Yeah. So you think after the childhood and then the Navy, right, things would get better? You
would hope so.
Right?
Yeah.
I remember leaving the submarine base and then driving. I was homeless. I had a Toyota pickup, $8,900 I bought that thing for, brand new. 5-speed, right? 2-seater, 6-foot bed. I'm sorry, 4-foot bed, small one, right? I mean, I don't think anybody remembers the Nissan pickups. It was actually the year that Datsun sold to Nissan. I don't think anybody knows what a Datsun is. The sticker on it used to say Datsun, now it says Nissan.
Actually, there right? is a Datsun pickup truck parked nearby here. I see it all the time, and it broke down recently right in front of my house. But yeah, that is one vehicle you don't hear much of. Yeah, the Datsun.
Right. So I was going to Boston because a shipmate brother of one of my shipmates had a construction company. So I was going up there to start work. Okay. Something's touching me. Anyway. Okay. And they're telling me be careful. Anyway, I ended up spending the next 6 months from October through the winter until spring, living on the back porch of a classic Boston triple-decker, right? Used to wake up and knock the snow off of me and go to work and,
sorry, can you explain, what is a Boston triple-decker?
Just a gigantic box-style house with a huge wraparound or a huge front porch.
Okay.
And an equal huge back porch, right? They call them Boston triple-deckers.
Okay.
Right?
Now I know.
The old farmer's front porch, but on a perfect box. Anyway, so and there were no stairs up to the back porch. So I had to climb this ladder to get up there. And anyway, doing it in the dark in the dead of winter with snow and everything, right? I mean, it didn't really faze me until the VA said you're homeless, right? And I'm like, well, I'm living on a back porch, right? And it didn't really click, okay? But again, I never really bitched about it, never complained about it. And everything I'd done in life never really, took me to the level of suicide, or harming myself. Never thought about it, right? Until I got put in the hands of the United States Veterans Administration. In my book, A Date with Suicide, it walks the reader through what it's like to be discharged from the Navy and dumped into a VA system, post Vietnam, right? Because that's when I came out, right? Vietnam was only 10 years behind us by the time I was discharged. Okay. So it was still a mess, and thank God for the Vietnam era veterans, because they turned that nightmare around. Okay. But, my first meeting was with a doctor that lasted 3-4 minutes. And that was it. That was their answer to solving my problem of what was wrong with me and how they were going to fix me from getting crushed and burned in fires and so on and so on. All the things that happened to me while I was on that boat. And they did nothing. Right. And when you read the story, you'll have a visceral reaction. Okay. Imagine being 22 years old and walking through something that nobody should see. Okay. Veterans just lining the aisles with feces. And there's a movie with Tom Cruise, 4th of July. Okay. That depicted what I was walking through pretty accurately. Okay. So anyway, you think it would get better, and, it didn't until I met my wife. Then it got better.
Okay. That's, wow, that is quite the life that you've lived. It's more than, maybe 10 people have lived, everything that the hardships and trials you have gone through. It's, not even to realize that you're homeless. You're like, no, I got this back porch I'm living on. This is fine. Just, you were just, it just seems that you
never complained about it.
Yeah. I was about to say, it just seems like you're just like, this is the cards I'm dealt, and I'm just going to keep on living, keep on trucking forward with it. And I'm not going to complain. And, wow, you are a strong individual, big time. It's quite apparent that, all these trials and tribulations that you've gone through, that, you've gone through fire, I don't know how many times, and you seem to have come out pretty well here at the end. So that's, I congratulate you. I just like, this is, I know we've all gone through some of our own things, but yeah, we have no idea. We have no idea what our neighbor has gone through sometimes. And to hear your story, it really, really sheds a light on that sometimes some of the issues and things that we are facing aren't as big as we think they are.
No, they aren't. No. And that's been my mentality all along.
Yeah. All right. So DePaul, where do we go from here then? So you were working, you went to the VA, and that was a date with death almost, with Dr. Death almost, in a way. It seems like, yeah. Like that it's that was a line. What happens from there forward?
Well, that was the start of a 40-year battle that's going on to this day with the VA. When they enacted the choice program and got me into got veterans access to private care here, about 8 years ago, that was life changing. It was the first time I went and saw civilian doctors, and they had answers, right? And they solved a couple of problems that the VA,
that they
couldn't even figure out,
couldn't or wouldn't.
Yeah. So, yeah. So, I could sit here and tell you stories about nightmares about the VA until the cows come home, but you get what I'm saying, right? So, that again, I had to go through those experiences to be able to do the good work that I've done. There's no way in God's green earth I was going to be active in dealing with the United States government, right up until my Uncle Paul, who did 2 tours in Vietnam as a Navy SEAL, reached out and said, "Hey, we want you to come down here and become part of this vet force." I'm like, I want nothing to do with government anything, right? And I stupidly made a bet with him, and I didn't realize he was a spook with a major NSA contract. So he had access to my files, and he called me back in record time and said, "You were here, here, and here on this date and this date. If you want to talk about it any further, we're going to have to get on a secure line." And I'm like, fuck. So drove down to DC and spent the next 10 years driving back and forth to DC as one of 8 nationally elected members of the vet force. The vet force was the one that got Public Law 109-461 on the books, which is called the Vet First Contracting Act. So every veteran, every disabled veteran now by law has the right to be awarded contracts from the Veterans Administration and the FAA first and foremost. And then President Bush signed Executive Order 13360, which mandated the entire government spend 3% of its budget on contracting with veterans and disabled veterans. So the legacy of that 10-year endeavor will go on for as long as
huge.
These things go on, right? Right. So it opened a lot of doors. It did a lot of things, so if all of those things didn't take place, then I wouldn't have been there to fight the way I was asked to fight. And the main thing I was asked to do was to root out fraud and a bunch of other stuff. So I spent 10 years chasing down guys that are, ripping off veterans and pretending to be veterans and testifying at sentencing. And I've had my life threatened. I couldn't tell you how many times because of the people that I exposed. So you thought, you think it was getting easier, after the age of 22? Buckle up, baby. It even gets more wild.
That's one thing,
Yeah.
I'm like, that is awesome that you went after those people, because fraud and corruption, I cannot stand. It's just something that it undermines so many things. When there's fraud and corruption in anything, you could almost have a perfect society, but there could be one person who is corrupt, and they will. That saying, one bad apple spoils the lot. It is almost true. They spoil so many others, and then they use things like that, and it's just. I would love for them to all be weeded out, but I don't think that will ever happen. I think we can get a bunch of them, but I don't think we can get them all. So,
yeah, sadly, I have to agree with you.
So, So you had told me prior to the show here, before I was recording, that you are a shaman as well, a practicing shaman of sorts. Would you like to get into that? Like, how did that transpire? And you also said that you have native roots as well. So, you're walking the red road. Can we go into that aspect of your life?
Sure. Are you familiar with the term the red road?
Yes, I am.
Okay. So, my Native Americanism was with me from the day I was born. Okay. My grandfather, my great-grandmother jumped the reservation and gave birth to my grandfather in our ancestral grounds. They found him, wrapped him up, sent him back to the reservation. And then he was sent off to the boarding schools. And at age 14, he jumped the boarding schools, claimed he was white, joined the Navy, and in 1930s, and then rode submarines in the Pacific for the first half of World War II, right? But again, he claimed he was white, rose to the rank of a chief, then a warrant officer, and retired in 65. That's 1965. As a lieutenant commander, and I got a great photograph of him, of his tombstone up in Fort Snelling, Minnesota. So that's my lineage back to my roots on my mother's side of the tree. My father's side of the tree is a whole different story. Okay, so let's just kind of focus on that piece. When I grew up, my mother kept us around the Native American. Okay, and in this part of the world, there's two major tribes that we were part of. Right up until my mother had a split with them, and and that kind of ended. But I remember going to powwows as a child and dancing, and the drums just called my name, and I could relate so well to Native Americanism that I felt at home. It's one of the few places that I ever felt comfortable to this day. But the drums and the flute music just calls me, right? It just soothes my soul, and I can pound my heart right along with that drum beat. So I always had that connection. And then being a Hyoka, which I'm born I believe that a Hyoka is born. They're not crafted, made, or you don't learn the skills.
And a Hyoka is a shaman of sorts.
You could say that. Shaman's kind of a watered down word these days.
It is. It is. Yeah.
So I don't shun the titles. I mean, that's what it is. But the title of a seasoned holy man is one I hold with great honor, and that was given to me by Granddaughter Crow from the Navajo Nation. Okay, and I accepted it reluctantly after arguing with her. That I really don't want titles. I really don't want. I don't want those labels. And what she said to me made sense. This title is going to open doors. It's going to make people ask questions, and then you'll be able to get these messages out. And I said, okay. And I said, you really think I'm qualified? And she goes, you're more qualified than anybody I've ever met. I'm like, all right. Okay. I'm trained by a number of different folks, but the two of the really ones that I stay close with is a Lakota woman who, trains everything Lakota. and you see the flashes going on. I got to be careful.
Yeah,
It's more.
I just saw that. I was like, okay, did I see that, or is that? And I saw one earlier. Actually, I actually wrote down the timestamp on it. It was almost exactly 10 minutes ago. Something else flashed on the screen as well.
Yeah, but that one was a little more obvious to me because it's whispering in my ear as well. Listen, I've had a lot of I've done a lot of work to be in the position I'm in. Self-taught in some areas, schooled by elders in other areas, and I've been around some folks that are that make me look silly. That's how skilled they are. I like to use the book Chief Fool's Crow. Okay, he lived to be 99 years old, a Lakota. Okay, and he did a lot of healing. Okay, and he had a unique way of doing it. And anybody that does what I do, everybody's different. All right. But in the end, the name, a seasoned holy man, is what fits right and what kind of rings true.
That I like that, and I can respect that. I've kind of walked that same path. I'm not native, but I was invited in to be taught by a shaman. She taught me, for about a year. And then I fell into, I befriended a medicine woman. And she, I helped her along with so many things, and I learned so much from her. Though I do feel that I stepped away from it because I didn't feel right. Because everybody else, like you said about these titles, they're like, oh, I'm this title, I'm this, or I'm that. And, I used to say I'm a shamanic practitioner, and I did not feel right saying that at all. I felt like I was like, it wasn't
cheating
me.
The system.
Yes. And I'm like, no, I don't feel right using that moniker or something like that. I'm like, it's just me. This is what I know. This is the stuff that I've learned. And yeah, so that is how I went. Though I have pretty much I've taken on the moniker of the Codega because I that's a profession. It was a guide who would guide people along their journeys. They would light the way and keep them safe as they journeyed on. And I felt that was a little more fitting. And it was a true profession in Venice. And it was something that when I was practicing, that's actually what came to me, was that, not the shamanic practitioner. I didn't like that at all. But a Codega, or the Codega, it was more suiting. But even then, I'm still like, it's just me. I'm just me. But yeah, I can relate to a lot of what you're saying, and I've the drums, not so much the flutes, because where I went and where I've visited, there wasn't many flute playing, but it was a lot of drums. And you can really, like you said, I can really get lost within the drums. It's not like I don't like the flutes, but the drums were just more common. It's quite the experience as well. And I was asked to join in a powwow, which I've never done. I've never taken that honor yet. Again, I just don't feel right at this time. It's like, no, not yet. Maybe sometime in the future, I could join that medicine woman that I was mentioning earlier.
Well, I've been studying for decades, and I'm as humble as I can be, because I see things that have tremendous power, and I'm nothing compared to that. Not in a bad way, just I hear what you're saying, but again, the point behind the title is to get people's attention, and when they look at it and they like, what the heck is a Hioka, right? And what is a seasoned holy man? It sparks the question, which allows me to get the message out. Now, being a Hioka is fun. Okay, that's just flat out fun. And I've had that gift, ability my whole life. And that just means I see things that the herd doesn't see. I react in ways that the herd doesn't react. And I never follow mainstream. And I'm always the black sheep of whoever the hell we're dealing with. Traditionally, a Hioka would ride through a tribal village backwards on a horse to get people's attention. Another way to describe it is a clown or a court gesture. Okay. You're always doing things to shake the tribe up, or your community or your village, right? You're always looking at things from angles that nobody else is looking at it. And people say, oh, so you sit there and think these things out? And I go, nope. They just bink, 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 right? It's just there, you know?
I can relate to that completely as well, and approaching things from a different angle just to see things differently. That's why sometimes we ask, for, Eagle to help us out because they look at things from a different perspective. And it's all about seeing things from a different point of view so that maybe you have a better understanding of what is happening and what is going on. Because
it takes
yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
It takes a lot of work to understand the animal kingdom or the earth itself. Granddaughter Crow, right? A couple of her books, Belief, Being, and Beyond, and her most recent one, Shamanism and Your Shadow. Okay, I'm still rereading this book because of and talking with her about it. Okay, because learning about your shadow has so many different directions to go in, and I don't know that I could ever stop learning about it in this lifetime. So for me, it's an ongoing and constant process. But again, I've been doing this, for decades, and the last decade plus heavily. So and I've got a lot to learn.
I think that's the biggest thing is that we need to all realize that we all have a lot to learn. It's not just,
Yes.
this one thing. It's the more I learn or the more I know, the more I realize I don't know.
Right.
I have so much more learning left to do. And and we were talking earlier about, these titles and stuff like that. I think sometimes, and I'm not saying you, but, like this, when I was saying it was shamanic practitioner, I think it is like associated with an ego. And that wasn't me. I'm like, no, I don't want that. And I think ego can corrupt. And, if you're going with if you're leading with the wrong idea or the wrong mentality, you're going to corrupt. And not only yourself, you're going to corrupt everything else that you're touching, which is, hopefully you don't corrupt people. Maybe some people will realize that and then they will move away. Like perhaps that person is giving lessons in what not to do.
Yeah, the ego is a dangerous piece of our existence. I had to work very hard. I'm going to leave it at that. Okay, but I had to do things that made sure that my ego could no longer play a role in what I'm doing. Okay, because it's just it is a dangerous piece. It's more dangerous to me than somebody's desire for power or money or fame. It's just not it's a dangerous thing.
Yeah, extremely. It can cause a lot of damage, not to yourself, but to other people as well. And it's something It's something I'm still dealing with. And, when you're saying dealing with our shadow, for me, that's part of the shadow is the ego, and it's trying to deal with that and to address it and to not ignore it. Actually, I think a lot of times we'd rather look at other people and their problems, or look at or face other outside big issues rather than look in the mirror and look at the man in the mirror and deal with that person on one-on-one, because it's
not easy.
No, it is not.
It's not easy.
Because
next thing I should be saying, right, is it's very rewarding. No, it's not. It's growth though, and it's necessary growth. And all growth isn't fun. It's painful. Okay. But the reward on the other side of accomplishing that is priceless. And I'm living example of it. Okay. I've overcome some things that folks like you are use very kind words towards. Okay. I don't spend much time thinking on it because I don't want the ego to, get revived. Okay. I'm grateful for the kindness. Okay. But again, we can leave it at that.
No, that sounds good.
I could go down that trail for a while.
I think we both could. I think we could have a very long discussion on that. It's something that I'm still dealing with, and it's difficult to go deep because that's something that I need to do is go deeper into the ego and to dismantle it. Though we do need it, there is a benefit at some point to having an ego, but you don't want it. It's not to be in the driver's seat. It's going to be in the back seat. It is the bottom line for it. We do need ego as part of us, but it cannot be in control. It cannot be driving, cannot be making those calls, those judgment calls. Now, default that you were, so now that you are this Hayoka, I'd love to hear some experiences or anything that you've done concerning this, like, is there any things that you've come up against that have been quite difficult or quite interesting or intriguing that we'd like to dive in a little bit to?
Yeah. Being a Hayoka is one of the most fun things I get to do. Okay. Well, why, you ask? Okay. Because it pisses people off. All right. It shakes the tree. It gets people out of their comfort zone. Right. Let's talk about the world of book writing. Okay. Let's say you misspell a word in a book. These folks that are in the publishing world, these college boys, right? College boys and girls. Man, these people are something else, right? If you don't do things that conform with their way, man, they're boom, right? They lose their minds. When I was writing this book, pay attention to the word mysteries. Okay. Now, Spirit World told me what to write. Okay. So when this goes to editing and some people, man, they lost their mind. You can't do that. And I'm like, why? It's because it's IES. I'm like, who the hell cares? Oh, whoa. Okay. Now again, here comes the Hayoka part, right? I was told mysteries with a Y. Now again, when you type in a computer now, and again, I'm not a very smart guy, not when it comes to schooling and all that, right? Okay. Trust me. Okay. When you type it in the computer goes red and crazy, and it's like, that's not the right spelling. Right? So you got to call Bill Gates himself to get it to override the computer so you can type the way you want to type, right?
Yeah, okay? Exactly.
Well, you get into the editing community and man, they just lose their minds. And here's the other part. Okay. Your chapters have to be, and you can't this and that. And as soon as I hear that stuff, I instantly go the other way. And I say, no, we're going to shake this up. Okay. Book 2 of this series, okay, is chapter 33, starts at the halfway point of the book and takes up the rest of the book, okay? One chapter, 40,000 words, actually 42,000 and change. Oh my God, these people are losing their minds, right? They're going crazy. I broke the system of book release and publishing and editing. Right? How much fun is it to watch these folks spinning in these insane circles? Because it's about 1/10000000 of 1% of the whole population. Most people don't know the difference. And those that do don't necessarily care because they were taught not to judge a book by its cover. Okay? Now here's the really fun part, right? I posted this online and these college boys and girls kind of call me out left and right. I'll never read your book because the word's spelt wrong. And then they go on and make asses of themselves by saying, you should have put a note in there. And I simply flip to the next opening part that says, by the way, past the dedication, it says there are no misspellings in this book. There are mysteries wrapped in mysteries. And it's up to the reader to figure out why this word is spelt this way. Okay. There's codes in this thing that need to be broken. And it's got to be over the next 20 years because the final secrets of the mysteries inside the Wyndham Inn are supposed to be revealed by the 300th anniversary, the timeline. Okay. So there's a lot to it. But being a Hayoka, I get to do things that make people nuts. And I'll close with this thought on that. The last page of this book, and I'm gonna tip it off to you, okay? That's how the book ends, okay? Bang, 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 okay? And then nothing more, okay? It's making people go bananas, all right? I got a 5-star review posted on Amazon that says, where the hell do I start? You suck, okay? This book kept me captivated and get to the conclusion quicker, and now I'm confused, okay? This woman is raising bloody hell because of the way I ended book 1 in a series, okay? Listen, you want to know what happens? Read book 2, okay? So as a Hayoka, that's where I get to start enjoying some things, okay? Now, people that know me, more times than not are terrified to say certain things, right? Because they know I'll come back and say, yeah, what if we did it this way, right? But being Ioka, I'll get off that horse for now, but it has its rewards. Okay. So to me, that's kind of the fun part of my existence that God gave me while I'm dealing with the rest of this stuff. Okay. I didn't play too long on the top of that pony, did I?
No, you did not. You did not. No, that's
Yeah, I'll never get a book publishing deal again. I just blew out the whole system.
Well, I like it. I like when you said that you kind of you challenge people. I think that's the biggest thing is that you're challenging people to not accept the status quo. You know, there's more to everything.
Get outside the box, right?
Yes, exactly.
Get outside the box.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
When you're looking at things from outside the box and the answer inside the box is still viable, well, then you've done your due diligence. Okay? Just trying to teach the masses to think differently. Don't think like the herd, right?
That is such a valuable lesson is to not think like the herd, to think outside the box. And thinking outside the box is something that is just so common. People hear that, like that phrase. It's so commonplace. But to actually do it is a completely different thing. You know, it's like, oh yeah, think outside the box. Oh yeah, I have it on a poster on my wall. Think outside the box. But
right.
Do people actually, you know, step away, look at things from a different perspective? And
no.
It's difficult. At times it is so difficult. We get so sucked into stuck. We get stuck in our ways,
yes.
And we get stuck in our ruts. And I think we all need a Hyoka to challenge us, to kick us in the butt, to move us out into a different lane, to change our routine, and to look at things differently so we can actually see that some things need to be done differently. Some things need to be handled differently, need to be spoken differently. And it's okay. And that's the bottom line is things are okay. A lot of things are okay. They don't have to be perfect. They can be okay. And that will be what is supposed to happen because we need change in this world more than anything.
Yeah. Starting with common sense and thinking outside the box, right? The two least sensible, the two least things people have, you know?
Common sense. And it's funny that saying common sense isn't so common. It's becoming more and more relative as well. It just, you know, it's just ridiculous. Sorry. I'm not getting, I'm thinking politics and I'm like, I'm not going to talk politics because.
I'm with you. Look at the way things are right now. Everybody's screaming, I need my food stamps and things like that. Listen, okay, but you knew it was coming. But you didn't do anything. Okay? Go get a job.
No
go
matter
do
who
something.
is to blame.
Go
no matter
somewhere
who is
for a
to
day.
blame.
Make $100.
Yes.
Something.
No matter
right?
who is to blame, deal with the situation. Don't just be like, okay, something's going to happen. And actually, this is what I will say before we wrap this up in a little bit, is that a lot of people are too inclined to sit back and let other people save them. Okay? I'm going to sit here on this couch and I'm going to wait because they told me to wait. They told me to, whether it's trust the plan, they told me just to sit here and wait. Someone's going to come and save me. A person in a white horse, you know, is going to come and save me. He's going to ride through. We got to start saving ourselves. You know, that is what we're instilled with this power, with this power to save ourselves. But the darkness wants us to sit back and be a spectator and not be a player in this game.
Listen, this whole scenario has been going on for a long time, and the baby Jesus tried to tell us, right? He fed 5,000 people in one day, okay? Gave them all fish, right? What did everybody do? 5,000 people. They showed up with friends the next day, okay? Nobody went fishing. They all came back looking for their free meal. But day number 2 wasn't 5,000 people. They had friends, company. All of a sudden, oh, here we go. The easy way to do it. If you study Native American history, you can see what's called loafers, okay? Hang around the forts, all right? People that, you know, would, instead of being native and doing what you were trained, got lazy, right? And just waited for their government handouts, okay? Right? Depending on anything other than yourself and your spirit world is stupid. Okay? Anybody that's successful will tell you, no, I depend on me. I mean, you got to depend on other people and so on and so on. But the bottom line is it's up to you, period.
It is. It really is. And I will say that some of my biggest mistakes or failures upon myself is me thinking some other people are going to do it for me instead of me doing it myself. And it's not that we shouldn't have people to rely on, but sometimes we put too much reliance on other people when we should be actually dealing with our own problems ourselves and solving those problems and making things happen. That's the bottom.
Yeah, right. And isn't it sad when we want things for other people more than they want them? Okay, we see it in them and like, oh, you can do this, and they just, they don't want to do the work. Okay, you have to do the work.
Yep.
Okay. Now listen, I know you're dying to ask me about things like, some of the darkest stuff I've seen and what do I do to clear stuff out and all that. So I don't know how much longer you want to talk, but I've got to go to bed here in a few hours.
So I wasn't even thinking about that. Let's go into some of the darkest things. Perfect. That's the question. What are some of the darkest things you've seen before? Tell me about them. Don't hold back any details either.
Okay. So in part, some of the things that I do is, get rid of all kinds of different levels of darkness. And, people always think they're just kind of demons and all this, but it's so much more. There's this one property that I had to clear that had these entities. There's no real word to describe them, that were embedded into the land, and they had come up into the foundation of the house, and they were just pumping and pulsating just dark energy. And the family was fighting, and it was a mess. I mean, it was a mess. Okay. So that was a tough one. I had to bring in a lot of help on that one. So I had to bring in some friends. There was a lot there. Okay. That was tough. Okay. Hard, a lot of work, so on and so on. When people ask me, what's the scariest thing you ever removed or fought or something, it strikes them oddly when I say I don't have any fear of evil. None. Okay. Now, again, look at my childhood, right? Look at what I did in the Navy. I mean, I see all this stuff. But as I learned to overcome my own fears, right? White light, you see a ghost standing in front of you. You don't know what it is. So what happens? Your instincts are fear. And then as you learn what a ghost and a spirit and a poltergeist and what things can do and, what real darkness is and what a demon is, tricksters and all this. Once you start understanding all that and realize it's just a low vibration energy and, how you learn how to remove it and protect yourself against it, it's no big deal. And I've come up against some stuff that's pretty dark, but, it's all about being a hollow bone. Okay. A holy man who can move God's light, Great Spirit's light, angel's light, whatever you want to call it, whatever's needed to bear on the situation, whether it's healing people, whether it's removing darkness, whether, whatever it be. And I've done enough of these interviews where people weren't satisfied with that answer. So I had to have a come to Jesus moment with myself and ask the spirit world if it was a wise idea for me to tell them about the one thing that terrified me. After a period of time, I had to formulate it the right way. So here we go. Some time ago, when I was on one of my why me kicks, right? Why God? You're supposed to be this power and so on. Why? Before I learned, the facts of why we're here and so on and so on. Okay. I was having a little bit of a pity party, a little pissed off, right? And I got all these spirits around me, and I had enough. Okay. And I'm going to put up some protection while I say this. Gatekeeper, God, Jesus, everybody, I'm telling the story. I'm not asking for it to happen. You know that. Okay. All right. So what I said was, enough. I'm demanding all of you get the away from me. Okay. Now the key is your intent. Okay. When you apologize to somebody, right? Are you just apologizing or do you mean it? Right? What's your intent? Now I can feel people's intent. Right? Right. When I pushed away, I meant it. That was the mistake. So all the protection that was around me drifted backwards slowly. And as God is my witness, the most terrifying thing I've ever seen in my existence started slithering through the air. Okay. It had a face that would make the baby Jesus fall back in love with the devil. Okay. It was as vile as it gets. The stench, the taste that stuck to my tongue was so disgusting. There's no way to explain it. The slime and the slither and the hatred and the vileness of raw, pure evil was coming at me. And I knew in that blink of an eye that its intent was to capture my soul, and I would be living in that nastiness for all of existence. In that half of a heartbeat, I realized how wrong I was. In the second half of that heartbeat, I begged God, my guides, Great Spirit, everything to forgive me and come back. And they did. And this chunk of slimy nastiness was wrapped up by white light and removed. And it was a fight. A fight. So I'm watching this unfold in front of me, and Archangel Michael and so on and so on. Okay. And I have never been more terrified, more ashamed, more humbled, and more ready to accept all of my past and all of my future, and to go to battle as the spiritual warrior that I was sent here to be.
That is beautiful, but also quite a lesson to learn on that one. Now, I have a question. That evil that was slithering in, that was coming in, did you ever see that before? I'm wondering if it was what was infesting your stepfather, if that was like, kind of what.
I know all about that. Mm-hmm. I know all about what was surrounding that rat bastard, and
but one of the things I used to see. This was something else.
No. One of the things I would see around here was this woman that he had killed, and I could see the knife wounds, and she would tell me stuff, and she would point at him, and he had some. He was terrified to die, and I mean terrified. Okay, I'm not. I never have been. Dying's easy, living's hard. Okay, but that what I saw that night. Made him look like a fucking saint. Man, I'm sorry, but made him look like a.
Yeah, no.
Honestly, it was it's the reason I now understand that I don't fear evil. Okay. I've never seen anything like that again. So the other stuff that I get into, and again, I've seen what white light can do, and when you call in the right forces and do all the prep work. I mean, it's a lot of work. It's not easy. Okay. And you make a mistake, you're putting your soul at risk, right? So this isn't just a game of good and evil. This is some long-term stuff that I deal with. So,
and you had mentioned also as well that you deal in the dream world too. I think can we go into that a little bit? That's something that I find extremely fascinating. That I find that I have visited multiple times, and I'd love to hear your take on it and what you believe it truly is, or I'd just like to hear you talk about it.
Yeah. So my whole life I've dreamt what was coming. Okay. I see this massive explosion in DC, and I've talked about it and written about it, with the Washington Monument, and it's daylight, and Harpo Productions. I think, Winfrey has a building there. And my sense is that somebody packs that full of TNT and boom. Okay, but I'm not positive. Those are just the signs I'm getting in the explosion. Those things are something to deal with. I've seen a lot. I saw the war in Israel coming. And so when I was young, I used to know that I would dream my future and see things, and I would. And to me, it was kind of comforting because I could know where I was going. And then as I got older, I started seeing things that were not so enjoyable. And I kind of did what I could to squash that. Okay. And then when I really jumped on my red road and started down that path, I had to do in part my dreams. Okay. So I opened a dream log, and I, have the dreams, wake up, and I write everything down, and so on and so on. Okay. So I've seen a lot of stuff. I know a lot of stuff that's coming, and I don't talk about it all that much. But I know a lot about people, family members, and so on. And, people think that that's fun stuff. Yeah. It's not necessarily fun, but I'm a big believer in your dreams, and, it's the spirit world talking to you. It's another form of meditation, so your body tends to leave, your spirit tends to leave your body when you're really in a deep REM, and take some time off and goes and plays golf or something. I don't know, because they don't fill me in. But, your gatekeeper stays with you and keeps you protected and all that. But I do know a lot about it, and I'm a big supporter of folks who want to kind of try to do dream analysis. And I'll caveat that with something that will, kind of open your listeners' eyes. If I went upstairs and grabbed my dream log and brought it down here right now, I could point to you what I'm about to tell you. 3 years ago, March, I had a dream, and it kept coming. And I was arguing with myself in the spirit world about writing it down because, there's the theory on, you manifest things and so on and so on. So, you can lose your mind trying to figure this out, right? So I'm desperate not to manifest what this dream was telling me. And at the same breath, I'm praying it wasn't true. Okay. After it came to me a number of times, it was very clear that the spirit world needed me to know this was coming. So March 3 years ago, I wrote down that my wife has cancer. March of this year, she was diagnosed with stage 4, aggressive, non-curable cancer.
Oh, wow. I'm sorry to hear that.
I'll sit on that for 3 years.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'll sit on that for 3 years of your life and talk to me about the work that it takes to do what I do. And that's just one thing in my dream logs.
That's that is a very, very touching one, very difficult too. You hear this, you get these messages and especially that's pretty intense. I pray, I know you said it's non-curable, but I pray that, there is an intervention somehow and that is healed. Though I don't know if that is what her life entails. But yeah, it's hard.
I do. Because in another dream, it showed me the end game.
Okay.
And no, I've never said it out loud, and I won't. I didn't tell anybody that my wife was going to have cancer, including her, and I won't say the end game. Okay. I'm a firm believer in Western medicine and, spiritual healing. Absolute believer, right? People say, well, I'll call you up if I'm listening. Listen, man, you cut your leg off, go to the emergency room, right? If you got a fever, what the hell am I going to do? Okay. I can deal with things, but, anyway.
Yeah, I'm no doctor, but I've heard a lot about Fenben. Something to look into it's called Fenben, but that I can send to you at a later date. But when you're talking about dreams and dreaming the reality and dreaming the truth, that is something that I feel if I have I don't want to call it a gift, but if I have something that is more in tune, would be that my dreams and me are like right on par with like so many things happening. I've predicted things happening, and like you said, when you had the dream that happened in March, and then March of this year, 3 years to the date. I've had things like that too, where I've had not to that extreme, but I've had an argument in a church. I had an argument with a woman. It was a very specific argument. And then for some reason, I was going through my dream journal and I flipped back and I found the dream that corresponded with that. I wasn't looking for it, but I found it. And it happened to the day 4 years prior. And it was, I asked my wife, I'm like, when did we go to this church here? And she told me, she's like, oh, that was end of February. I'm like, no, specific date. So she tells me, and I'm like, read this. And she reads it and she's like, she closed it. She's like, you're freaking me out. Yeah. These things happen.
It freaks people out. It freaks people out. I'll tell you this one. It's a short story on visions and seeing things. I was in North Carolina with my daughter, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago. No, it can't be this. I don't know, 10 years ago. Let's pick a number. And she was pregnant, and her and her husband were having an argument. And I jumped in the middle of it not something I do. Okay. But I jumped in the middle of it and I started reading them the Riot Act. And again, it was, something was channeling through me. And in that, I was telling them, and I'm pointing at my daughter and say, you don't know how close you are to having the worst month of your life. It's going to be a month that you question God and everything else. Okay. And when I was done, my wife said to me, she goes, what the hell were you talking about? I'm like, I don't know, Terry. It just got channeled through me. Okay. A couple months later, she gave birth to her second child. Okay. And kid was born with a defective heart. Right. She spent the next month in the hospital with this child until he was healthy enough to, survive. Kid's healthy now. Okay. But that freaked her out and her husband. To this day, they still kind of shake their head. Again, I don't spend a lot of this time with, the family and whatnot because there's no value in it because it freaks people out. So you have to learn to understand why the dreams are telling you these things. There are certain things that I see, like I saw a massive tsunami in Costa Rica. Okay, massive tsunami. And it felt, I could hear the screaming. And it was an extremely vivid detail, and it was a detailed dream of me walking through this hotel lobby and 50-foot wave and just the mass of humanity. It was crazy. So I reached out to some of the folks I work with and I said, hey, what do you think? And they were all talking. They're saying, no, we've got to do a circle. So we spent a couple of days doing a prayer circle, and so, that was a long time ago. And I'm told that dream is not going to come to pass. Okay. So, whether we did anything or not, who knows? Who cares? It didn't happen. Okay. So again, to me, you have to look at dreams from all angles and kind of be ready for, what's coming.
I agree wholeheartedly, and myself, whenever I have a dream about someone or with someone, I will always pass that on. And I don't know what it means. Sometimes I don't know what the dream means to me, but it's kind of like, hey, and I've gotten to the point now where when the first couple of times I used to do it, I was like, this is kind of weird. Now I don't care. I'm like, hey, you're in my dream last night and this happened. Like, actually, one of my previous guests, Jess from Jacob's Ladder, I had a dream where she was there, but I couldn't see her. Like, it was like she was off to the side. I could not see her, but she was there. And we were in an apartment. And I remember telling her, I'm like, or she was telling me that she was in fear because she was being stalked by her ex-boyfriend. And I was just like, so this is, I don't know how that tied into anything, but I was like, so I sent her a message the next day. And I'm like, hey, Jess, you're in my dream. This is what happened. You were in this apartment, this. And she's like, you got to be shitting me. I'm like, well, why? And she's like, yesterday, I had an incident with an ex-boyfriend who has been stalking me. And I messaged him and I was like, hey, I think this was you out here. And this person was like, no, it wasn't me. She's like, okay, well, we have cameras. So if it was, we can check to see. But she's like, I just literally messaged that person yesterday. I haven't talked to in years, but I messaged him yesterday about stalking me. She's like, that was so strange. And she's like, thank you for the kind of like confirmation, because he never admitted to it, but she believed it was him. And it was almost this confirmation of that. Okay, I think that, it's a viable fear that I need to be aware of. So I was like, oh, and so she sent me the screenshots of the text message and everything. It's like, okay. And for me, it's not like, aha, I did that. For me, it's just like, pass the message on. This is a message I'm supposed to pass on to you. I'm just a messenger, and here you go. Yeah.
The definition of a shaman, right?
Yeah.
It's a messenger, right? A go-between between the spirit world and the living.
Okay. Okay. So now that you said that, I'm going to show you something here. Okay. So I have this tattoo right here on my arm. Okay. It's actually supposed to be like, hang on. It's supposed to be like this. Okay. This is called the Indalo, and this is from Spain, which is funny because the Codega is from Venice. Well, that's Italy. So in that general vicinity, but the Indalo is the go-to person between heaven and earth, spirit world, and this world. And the reason why I have this tattooed, it had to happen multiple times before I finally got it. So I was in a sweat lodge with the medicine woman. I was her firekeeper, helping her with the sweat lodge, and I was a spirit presented this symbol to me, And I saw it clearly. So I drew it on the sand and I asked her, she's like, I don't know what that is. It's like, okay. Couple weeks later, I was at a bookstore and I was just kind of when you get these, not an intuition, but just guided to open a book. And so I grabbed this book and it was these signs and symbols. And I opened it up and I flipped through. And sure enough, there is the Indalo. I'm like, okay, so that's 2. And I was like, that's interesting. So I read all about it, and he's holding a rainbow. It's the Rainbow Bridge, and he can pass through both worlds more or less. It's same as Enoch, actually, from the Book of Enoch. He was considered the go-to person between spirit world and this world as well. Now, I went to the spot that I would. It was near this river where I would go and meditate and kind of practice some of my the shamanic things. You know, I would go there.
I understand. I understand.
I had this spot, and there was this rock, and this sounds so strange, but this rock spoke to me. It's like, break me open. So I was like, okay, and it was a big rock, like about this big. So I broke it open. That looks like jade, or is that
malachite?
Okay. Oh, malachite.
Malachite.
So I broke open this large rock, and inside, about 2/3 of the symbol is inside this rock. Like, I can see the lines, and of course there is a confirmation bias because I've seen this. It wasn't what I was expecting to see in there, but I've seen the symbol before, and I was like, okay, so this looks almost like this symbol. So it was at that point that I was like, okay, I'm going to tattoo it on my arm because that is a meaningful thing to me. So that was it.
So let me support that position, because the second you started telling that story, I haven't seen a lot of them through this conversation, because when people talk, I see bubbles. All right, and in those bubbles, I see where they're going. Okay, I see their story. Sometimes I laugh because I can see the story before they get to tell it. Okay. You know, and I can see what you were doing. I can't see the whole symbol, but I can see the loop, the piece in the bottom half inside the stone you couldn't see. Okay. And that's what I'm seeing while you're telling the story.
Okay.
I'm not laughing at the story.
No.
I'm laughing at that I'm seeing your story before you're telling it.
Okay. So
that's crazy stuff.
Please describe to me what you saw. So you saw a little bit of the loop and the bottom half of the symbol, right? Is what you said?
Yes.
I got to show you the picture. So I'm going to bring up the picture because I of course I took a picture of it because I think that's important to do that. So let me, if everybody just hold on 2 seconds here. Where is this picture? Okay. Now I'm going to share my screen here. All right. So this here is the picture of the rock. So we have a leg, we have the body, we have the base, and the starting of the loop up here. Right over at this point is what I think is the head. Now, I have put the symbol, superimposed the symbol there, and then I drew it out like that.
So what I saw was from the T up.
Okay, yeah. So up in this area.
No, I saw right where the T is.
Oh, right here.
So
yeah,
above the legs, below the T. That's what I saw. I see from right about there.
Okay. Yes.
But what it's telling me is that, so when I can see inside those bubbles when people talk, it's telling that those are truth bubbles to me. Okay. So people try to lie to me or tell different stories. I can feel it, sense it, know it. But when I can't see what people are saying, I get very concerned. When people tell stories and they're connected to them, their intent is really building with it, that energy you're creating pops those stories up for me. So I get to watch them as you go. It does the same thing when I look at people and I see darkness in them. I can see it kind of move, or I can see disease in people. And then I can see it move. And then, like I've seen, it's a Da Vinci, the guy with the arms and the legs.
Yeah.
The anatomy thing.
Something man.
Well, I see that and I see.
What is that? Yeah.
So like I'll look at it, and it happened to me recently with my wife, and I can see certain things, but, I can see a person's veins and vessels and bones, and I can see disease in it, and I can see blockages or little black spots. Okay. My shoulder my shoulder when I went to private care finally. And I was talking to the doctor, and he says, we're going to have to get an MRI on that. And I said, well, let me tell you what I see. And I drew it on his whiteboard. The tendon comes along and it bubbles up. And I said, this is all inflamed. And this guy with his PhD is staring at me like I'm a nut, right? And he goes, well, if you have an x-ray, why didn't you bring it with you? And I said, no, it's not an x-ray. It's what I see. He said, what do you mean? And so I see it in my head. Okay. Right. Well, he took the x-ray, brings it out and puts it next to my picture. It was perfect. Right. So anyway, that's kind of more of what I do.
That is fascinating. Yeah. It's, there is some fascinating things that happen in this world. And, I know a lot of people, and I'm at the cusp. It's like a razor's edge, though. What is coming from the light and what is coming from the dark? Because sometimes it's hard to decipher which is which. Because the dark is a lot of times the dark is not going to come to you and be like you said in that one instant where you let down your guard and everything, and this evil being, clear as day, was evil. There's many times that the evil will approach you in a kind way, and they will try to sway you over. And we always have to be on guard. I think I used to remember seeing this cartoon. It's like, come to the dark side. We have cookies, with association with Star Wars. And I actually think that's kind of along the same line. It's like they try to entice you over, and we always have to be on guard for that. So it's like, these gifts sometimes we are given. I think we always need to be careful of where they're coming from. And, if they are coming from the light, then we're meant to do good with them. But we got to be careful about the dark because sometimes people are approached. And this is what I was talking about earlier about the New Age. I find a lot of times that some of the New Age things out there are about capturing us, keeping us in this quagmire, and possibly redirecting us into another avenue that is not good for us. And we have to always be aware of that.
Yeah, I can confirm what you're saying, because I've dealt with a ton of dark entities that I'll call tricksters. Okay, some of them are low-level demons. Some of them are, not so low-level. But the first one that I really dealt with was in a family member. And it tricked me. It tricked me for, I'd like to say, about 5 minutes. Okay. And my guides were letting me get tricked, but they were close. Okay. And this thing was inside this girl, and it had a tuxedo on and a big brim hat and a tall hat. Okay. So it looked, like an Abe Lincoln hat, but it looked like, the Monopoly guy from, the Baron Age, right?
So,
okay.
Yeah, so I'll let you continue because I have to add to this. Yeah.
Right. So that was my first experience with what you're talking about darkness trying to trick you into, this one was trying to trick me into thinking it wasn't the entity I was trying to remove. Okay. But it took a couple minutes, it took about 5 minutes for me to figure it out. And then it clicked, and it was like, oh, you son of a bitch, you tricked me. And, I took another level up on understanding just how diabolical these things can be. Now, I've run into these things again and again and again. And, to me, it seems crazy, because you would think the demons would unionize and they'd have a little get together and say, all right, we've exhausted the Monopoly guy. Let's become the car or the shoe or something. Right. But I keep bumping into them. And every time I do some of these shows, people tell me I've seen one and I did this, or I moved one that looked just like that. So apparently this union isn't that organized. But.
Yeah. And it's, of course, the synchronicity of this is that my previous guest that I just interviewed on Tuesday, Jack, he had a incident when he was a little boy where he had a physical coyote or wolf standing outside of his window, standing up, dressed like the Monopoly man with a top hat and everything,
Come on.
Little watch and everything. And he lived on the second floor, and just outside of his window was like a terrace, like a roof to, I think it was like to the porch or something like that. And he was like, my dad's not going to believe me, but he actually called his dad. Like, this is in the morning, and there was footprints outside the window in the snow, because it was snow.
In the snow.
Yeah. So this is it sounds so crazy when you're saying these things. You're like, it's like maybe the first time someone might hear this, they're like, oh, that's crazy. But when you start hearing them, like myself now, that I'm hearing these things over and over again, I might have maybe years ago brushed this off. I'm like, maybe you'd imagine this. But the more and more, the consistency, it's funny that you said that. It's like, they're not spreading the message. They're all showing up in the Monopoly Man. I'm like, well, it's true. It's true. This is, they're coming off with this facade of like, I'm this refined individual and maybe you will accept me and allow me in. And that's the biggest thing, is allowing them in. We have to invite them in. So it's huge. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like it's like the vampires, and this is the thing that I bring up all the time. There's the legend that you need to invite a vampire into your home and then they can come in. I believe that goes with just about any spirit or entity. And if we put outside of our house a welcome mat, you are, in my belief, like this is what I believe, I'm not saying it's true, you're inviting them in. That is an invitation to come on in. You have this welcome mat, means, you're welcoming your guests. That, to me, is an invitation, allowing them free access into your home. So be careful with that. In my own opinion, I'm not sure if it's 100%, but you never know. I'd rather play on the side of caution on that one.
So for me, when I was, learning, anything would come and go, and it was crazy. Okay, but once I learned to put up protection and seal my house, my property, my car, where I'm going, to keep any darkness out, again, it was life-changing. So if you have a welcome mat and you're thinking along your lines, then just add to it mentally a note that says, welcome to only white light beings. Okay. If anybody comes to my house, I got so much protection up. As soon as their car crosses into the driveway, any darkness gets bounced off of them. Okay. And if there's something that's really, got some power or some strength, it won't be able to get through my front door. If you could literally be a spirit looking down at what the levels of protection I have around me. I mean, the statement of saying, this wolf was standing there and, that would put that thing to shame. Okay. But again, my belief factor shifted when I felt, tasted, smelt, and absorbed pure evil. Okay. I don't question any of this. I love to tell people, just because something looks like a gargoyle doesn't mean it's evil, or just because you see a ghost doesn't mean it's bad. Okay. For the most part, they're not. But if you want to really understand this, go to a Templar built church. Okay. And look at all the carvings in this place. Everything looks like it was pulled straight out of Hell's cookbook, right? And plastered on all of these churches. And I say to people, do you really think that if you're God loving and so on, you're going to put up all this demonic shit? Of course they didn't. Who's going to spend all that time as a Templar with a cross on you saying, yeah, let's create some demonic crap and plaster it all over the churches? It's not. I've had things like, that I'm talking about around me that were sent in from other people to help protect me that time. So that was one of the first times, like your story of the wolf kind of relates to me, because I had to learn what I just said about all of this stuff and trusting what you feel, not so much what you see.
Yes. Trusting what you feel.
How much fun you been having, Rye?
A lot. And I agree with you. Trusting what you feel. I think that is a huge gauge. If you trust your gut and you are terrified and your mind is trying to convince you, no, they're good, you need to listen. You need to listen to your gut. Your gut knows it's trying to tell you, if you're being paralyzed, if this entity is paralyzing you, and I'm not going to go any further with that, but if that is happening, that's not good. You need to be careful. Oh, this has been a fantastic conversation. I really enjoyed this. The second half of this conversation really, we really started going deep, and I really like that. You know what, DePaul?
How much fun was this one?
This was good.
It was a lot of fun.
It was. Yeah. It was. I really enjoyed it. And I don't know if you noticed, there was another. I wrote down when there was another glitch as well. Around.
Well, there's been a few.
Yeah. I'd seen a couple, and I was like, okay, I'm just going to write that down. I'm going to see it when I'm editing to see if it comes through. We're gonna see that, which is going to be fascinating, because this glitch. It seemed like it was on both of our screens, actually. Like, it went on the bottom half of mine and the bottom half of your screen as well. So that's I want to see what transpires when I'm doing the editing here. Hopefully I don't have any issues with the download, and you never know. You never know. Fingers are crossed. Asking for help with this one. But DePaul, we're wrapping things up here. Where can everybody find your books? Where can they locate them?
Yeah, so I write under two names, D. Paul Fleming. That's where you can find things like a date with suicide. Buy a book, give it to a vet. If you're a vet, do some reading, right? Steps to Crazy. You wanna understand what it's like to survive some of the toughest things in life, and you want to relate if you've gone through child abuse or neglect or any of that. Listen, they're great stories. I'm as candid in the books as I am on these shows. And my newest series, Mysteries of the Wyndham Inn, if you love anything to do with the spirit world and paranormal and ghosts and the living and haunted buildings and so on, this series is knocking the socks off of people. This was actually fun. And really, I have a ghostwriter that's telling me what to write, but I'm actually doing the writing. So enjoy it. And if you want to, Amazon's the easiest way to get there. You need to get a hold of me, please go through Ryan. Okay. My email is in my books, and I have a Facebook page out there, but, thank you so much for having me on your show, Ryan, and thank all your guests, right? And keep the faith, keep moving forward.
I agree. Thank you, D. I really, really appreciate this, and we will talk here in just a moment or so. All right, everyone. I want to say thank you again to D. Paul. That was a great conversation. He really opened up, and like he did in his book. He said he did in his book. He's the same thing. He's an open book where he is telling us about all these experiences that he's had, these trials and tribulations through his whole life. And he just keeps moving forward. And I think that's what we all need to do. It sounds like his life has been attacked by demons constantly, by these dark entities, but he keeps the light, he keeps the faith, and he keeps moving forward. And that's what we need to do always. Look at things from different perspectives. Think outside the box. Have that common sense. Those are some of the phrases that we always spout off, and I'm as guilty to spout them off and not actually follow through. I have to, stop. I need to practice what I preach. I'm all about these idiomatic expressions right now and all these phrases right now. I don't know, but it was something, because I was just talking about that today. I was just talking about practicing what I preach. It had come up in a conversation today, and so that just seems absolutely fitting to a way to end this episode. So again, if you guys liked Dee's books, please go check out in the show notes. You'll find all the links will be there. Go check him out on his Facebook. Write him an email if you got any questions. By all means, you guys can write them in the show notes not in the show notes, but write them in the comments. If you got any questions, write it in the comments, and we'll make sure that they get answered. And if you yourself have any experiences or if you've written any books as well and you would love to get on the show, by all means, fire me an email at Codex of Curiosities at gmail.com. It's been so long since I've actually said that. So there we go. Codex of Curiosities at gmail.com. I'm like stuck. All right. And with that, everyone, keep your curiosity wandering, keep the light lit, and always find your way home.
Beneath the stars where shadows grow, the Nephilim's echoes whisper low. Bigfoot roams through the forest deep, and Dogman prowls where the brave won't sleep. Across lost history we wonder why, seeking the truth that time tried to hide. Keep your curiosities wandering and the light lit, through the darkness don't ever quit. In the Codex, the mysteries come and always find your way back home. UFOs streak through the velvet skies. Aliens watch with unblinking eyes. The paranormal hums where silence breaks. In the void of secrets, a lantern wakes. Through hidden realms and stories untold, the Codex flame is a light to hold. Keep your curiosities wandering in the light lit. Through the darkness, don't ever quit. In the Codex, the mysteries come and always find your way back home. UFOs streak through the velvet skies. Aliens watch with unblinking eyes. The paranormal hums where silence breaks. In the void of secrets, a lantern wakes. Through hidden realms and stories untold, the Codex flame is a light to hold. Keep your curiosities wandering in the light lit. Through the darkness, don't ever quit. In the Codex, the mysteries come and always find your way back home. Legends rise from the Earth's deep core, a lost legacy we can't ignore. With every step, the veil grows thin, revealing worlds where the strange begins. Keep your curiosities wandering in the light lit. Through the darkness, don't ever quit. In the Codex, the mysteries come and always find your way back home. Giants, cryptids that call